Welcome to When Gen X Ruled the Multiplex, where I look at the films that shaped the worldview of those of us who were born somewhere between 1965 and 1980. A while back, I looked at John Carpenter's sci-fi cult favorite They Live, and today I'm examining another Carpenter classic, 1982's The Thing. The Thing was written by Bill Lancaster and was based on a 1938 novella titled Who Goes There by John W. Campbell Jr. That novella had been previously adapted into another film, 1951's The Thing from Another World. Carpenter's take on that story was a big failure initially. Not only was it a box office dud, it was one of the worst reviewed films of 1982. The critical and commercial response was so bad, in fact, that Carpenter was removed from his next directing project, which was to be 1984's Firestarter. In the intervening years, critical opinion on The Thing has effectively reversed, and now it's widely and correctly considered one of the all-time greats of both the horror and sci-fi genres. In a pre-credit sequence, which we will later learn takes place 100,000 years or so before the rest of the events of the film, an alien spacecraft rapidly approaches Earth. In Antarctica, circa 1982, a helicopter rapidly approaches an icy US-operated research base. The helicopter seems to be in pursuit of a super cute Alaskan Malamute who is booking it across the snow and ice. A passenger leans out of the helicopter and shoots at the dog. At the base, the members of the American crew go about their day. A pilot named McCready kicks back in his quarters by losing at computer chess while drinking some J&B blended Scotch whiskey. McCready's bottle of J&B will appear so many times throughout the film that I feel like it should have received second billing. McCready is played by former child star Kurt Russell, a frequent John Carpenter collaborator. At the time of The Thing, Russell had already starred in 1981's Escape from New York and the 1979 made-for-TV movie Elvis, both of which were directed by Carpenter. They'd go on to work together in Big Trouble in Little China and Escape from L.A. The members of the American crew watch as the helicopter circles the base, and the pilot and the passenger try to kill the dog by either shooting it or dropping explosives on it. The helicopter lands, and while trying to kill the dog, the passenger accidentally blows both himself and the helicopter to pieces. The dog runs up to the Americans. The pilot yells out a warning, which no one can understand because he's Norwegian, and opens fire on the dog. Believing they're under attack, the Americans shoot and kill the pilot. Meteorologist Bennings, played by Peter Maloney, was grazed by a bullet, and medical Dr. Copper, played by LA Law's Richard Dysart, patches him up. The base chef, Knowles, played by Punky Brewster's T.K. Carter, roller skates through the corridors. Radio operator Windows, played by Thomas Waits, not to be confused with singer-songwriter Tom Waits, tries in vain to make contact with the outer world at the urging of biologist Blair, played by Wilford Brimley. Brimley, who died last year at age 85, had been acting in bit parts for a while, but The Thing was his first prominent role before 1985's Cocoon turned him into America's favorite grumpy grandfather. Between Cocoon and the NBC drama Our House, Brimley evolved into such an American institution throughout the 80s that it seems hard to believe young whippersnapper Kurt Russell had been a star for 13 years before Brimley made his first credited screen appearance. Mechanic Palmer, played by 30-something's David Clennon, is nihilistic and antagonistic towards mild-mannered station commander Gary, who is played by Donald Moffat. Also present at the station are another mechanic, the splendidly surly and argumentative Childs, played by Keith David, whom we've already seen in John Carpenter's They Live, geologist Norris, played by Charles Hallahan, whom we've already seen in Vision Quest, dog handler Clark, played by Richard Masur, whom we've already seen in Risky Business, and biologist Fuchs, played by Joel Polis, known for playing rival tavern owner Gary on Cheers. Everyone's a little shaken up by the recent excitement. The helicopter pilot and his passenger were from a nearby Norwegian research base. Dr. Copper proposes visiting the base to see what went wrong, so McCready flies him there. This seems like a good place to mention that there's a pretty decent 2011 prequel to The Thing, which is also titled The Thing, which is confusing, but which explores everything that took place at that Norwegian research base immediately prior to the events of this film. The prequel ends where this film begins, with the helicopter pilot and his passenger shooting at the dog from the helicopter. At night, Knowles listens to Stevie Wonder's Superstition, which is a spot-on song choice for a film about mounting paranoia, while the dog wanders freely around the base. The score for The Thing is the work of legendary composer Ennio Morricone, who contributed the scores for hundreds of films and TV shows before his death last year. Copper and McCready arrive at the Norwegian base and find it in ruins. Inside, they find the frozen corpse of a man who appears to have slit his own throat. They also come across a tangle of charred bones and melted flesh that appears only vaguely human. McCready and Copper bring the tangled remains back to the base, where the scientists try to determine what it is. When the biologist, Blair, performs an autopsy, he discovers that this thing possesses normal human internal organs: heart, lungs, kidney, liver, and so forth. The thing's creature effects, by the way, are mostly the work of Rob Bottin, who does an exceptional job throughout the film of creating the stuff of nightmares. A big reason why the thing still packs a punch after all these years is that it is filled with images that are gross and horrifying in a visceral, eyeball-searing way. Let me tell you, getting screenshots for this analysis was an adventure. In the evening, the guys play poker and pool and watch video cassettes of US television shows. Annoyed at the way the dog keeps wandering around, Bennings asks Clark to kennel it. Caged with the other dogs on the base, the dog's muzzle rips apart to reveal a grotesque, multi-tentacled alien creature lurking within. When Clark investigates the chaos, he discovers the alien creature has begun to violently absorb the other dogs. MacReady heads into the kennel armed with a shotgun and shoots it, and Childs pops up with a flamethrower and torches it. A thoroughly grossed out Blair examines the charred remains of the dog-alien hybrid. He learns the alien creature can absorb and then imitate other life forms. Upon realizing the dog had been wandering unattended all around the camp, Blair grows suspicious that Clark or some of the others may have already been assimilated by the alien and are only posing as human. The group watches VHS footage of the Norwegian scientists retrieved from the other base. They learned they had discovered and excavated an alien spacecraft that had crashed in Antarctica thousands and thousands of years ago. MacReady leads a team to explore the crash site, where they also find evidence the Norwegians discovered and defrosted an alien creature. Blair runs some simulations and realizes the defrosted alien creature could quickly destroy all human life if it ever leaves the base and reaches the outside world. The tangled corpse MacReady and Dr. Copper brought back from the Norwegian base revives and attacks Bennings. Windows finds Bennings half assimilated and covered in tentacles. Fuchs tries to warn MacReady about Blair's mounting paranoia, but they're interrupted by a panicked Windows. The whole group searches for Bennings and finds him outside, almost fully assimilated by the alien. MacReady burns him to death. Since it's clear the alien has a robust ability to come back to life, they pile up the corpses of the known assimilated hosts, douse them in kerosene, and incinerate them. A deeply paranoid Blair destroys the helicopter and smashes their radio equipment with an axe so they can't contact the outside world. The others subdue Blair and lock him in a shed. A sedated Blair tells MacReady he can't trust anyone, but specifically warns him that Clark, who spent the most time with the assimilated dog, might very well be an alien in disguise. Because one or more of the remaining crew members might not be human, Dr. Copper suggests taking blood samples from everyone and comparing them to their stockpile of existing blood kept on hand for medical emergencies. The cabinet storing their blood supply has been sabotaged, presumably by someone who doesn't want the blood tested. Since Commander Gary and Dr. Copper are the only crew members with easy access to the cabinet, they fall under immediate suspicion. Gary relinquishes command, and the rest of the group decides to put MacReady in charge. MacReady separates the crew members most likely to be aliens in disguise, Gary, Dr. Copper, and Clark, from the rest of the group and keeps them under a constant observation. As a dangerous storm bears down on the base, Fuchs is stalked by someone in his lab. Spooked, he runs outside and finds MacReady's discarded long underwear. As the alien creature often rips through the clothing of his human host during the assimilation process, this suggests MacReady is an alien in disguise. The rest of the crew search for Fuchs, leaving Norris to look after Gary, Dr. Copper, and Clark. MacReady, Knowles, and Windows find Fuchs's incinerated corpse. They theorize he burned himself because the creature was coming after him and he didn't want to be assimilated. Spotting a light in his shed, MacReady investigates, taking Knowles with him. Childs suggests barricading the base. As they set about nailing all the doors shut, they spot Knowles returning and let him inside. Knowles explains that he left MacReady out in the storm to die because he found his torn clothing and believes he's been assimilated. Paranoia rages throughout the base. Everyone fights amongst themselves, certain they're all aliens in disguise. When a freezing MacReady returns, they refuse to let him in the base until he whips out some dynamite and threatens to blow everyone up unless they let him in. Inside the base, Norris suddenly drops dead of a heart attack. Dr. Copper tries to resuscitate him, but Norris's chest collapses open, revealing an alien creature inside, which kills Dr. Copper. MacReady whips out a flamethrower and blasts the assimilated Norris. Norris's detached head sprouts tentacle-like legs and scuttles around, scaring the bejesus out of everyone until MacReady finally destroys it. MacReady holds everyone at gunpoint and orders them to tie each other up. When Clark tries to tackle MacReady, MacReady shoots and kills him. After everybody is secured, MacReady gathers blood samples from everyone and sticks hot wires in the samples. When he sticks a hot wire in Palmer's blood, the blood jumps out of the dish in a clear defensive maneuver, thus proving Palmer has been assimilated. The alien fights its way out of Palmer's body, then grabs and assimilates Windows. MacReady fries Palmer with a flamethrower, then incinerates Windows as well. The surviving four inside the base, MacReady, Childs, Knowles, Knowles and Commander Gary decide to administer a blood test to Blair. They find that Blair has escaped through a hole in the ice into a subterranean lair. Blair, who has clearly been assimilated, has built himself an escape vehicle from parts salvaged from the helicopter. Child slips off by himself for no apparent reason, and the base loses power immediately thereafter. This might mean Child is an alien trying to sabotage them, and definitely means they'll all soon freeze to death. MacReady believes the alien creature wants to be frozen, knowing it'll eventually be thawed by a rescue team. To prevent this, MacReady, Knowles, and Gary rig the entire base with dynamite. An assimilated Blair attacks and assimilates Gary. Knowles hears the commotion and heads off to investigate. Presumably the Thing gets him as well, but in any case, he is never seen again. The Thing attacks MacReady, the last man standing, who chucks dynamite at it, then blows up the base. Alone in the dark and cold, MacReady is approached by Childs, who gives no explanation as to why he left earlier. MacReady and Childs shelter in the flames of the burning base. Doomed to certain death from the elements, and uncertain as to whether one or both have been assimilated, they share MacReady's bottle of J&B. I was 8 when The Thing came out. I didn't see it in the theaters, though I remember being intrigued by the poster, and I was fascinated by horror stories from classmates who'd seen it, who described things I could barely believe. There's a guy whose head gets ripped off and then his head sprouts legs and walks away. I remember thinking, that sounds disgusting and terrible, and I absolutely should see that. In 1982, The Thing was known for being very gross and very bad. As it turned out, only half of that statement was true. The Thing is indeed very gross, but it is also excellent. While watching the film, it gets complicated trying to figure out who's been assimilated and when. In fact, unless you read the tie-in film-to-book novelization or the 1991 Dark Horse comic that served as a continuation of the story, or any other supplementary media, it's often impossible to know who's alien and who's human. At the end of the film, is Childs an alien? Is MacReady? We really don't know, and it's not important because that's not exactly what The Thing is about. The film is about the paranoia that infects the group in ways that are ultimately just as destructive as The Thing itself. Even though these are all smart, competent, relatively stable guys, their paranoia dooms them. Because they can't trust each other, all of their tactics for identifying and destroying The Thing fail spectacularly, except perhaps for the last-ditch attempt at mutually assured destruction by blowing up the entire base. And at the end of the film, it's not even entirely clear that that tactic worked. And that made The Thing a perfect horror story for Gen Xers raised in the middle of the Cold War, surrounded by the constant possibility of mutually assured destruction in the event of a nuclear war with the Soviets. The Thing is about searching so hard to identify the monsters surrounding you that you completely fail to notice the monster within you. As I mentioned at the start, The Thing tanked at the box office upon release, as did Blade Runner, which opened in theaters on the very same day, June 25th, 1982. I covered Blade Runner extensively here a few weeks back, so I'm not going to go into it in too much depth, but both The Thing and Blade Runner are smart, dark, nihilistic, complicated, ambiguous films that require some effort from viewers. Alas for the box office prospects of Blade Runner and The Thing, in 1982 viewer preferences for horror and science fiction films were tilting in a very different direction. The top-grossing film of 1982 was E.T., which was directed by Steven Spielberg, and the top-grossing horror film of 1982 was Poltergeist, which was written and produced by Spielberg. Both of those are PG-rated, family-friendly, crowd-pleasing popcorn films about relatable characters who worked together and trusted each other to bring about a happy ending. The Thing was something very different, and it was also very different from the other kind of horror film that was popular at this time, the slasher films featuring sexy teens who run around in their underwear getting stalked by a killer. The Thing is body horror, a film and literary subgenre in which the human body is mutilated in various grotesque and violent ways. The world of The Thing is gory, cold, and hopeless. The many killings in the film are brutal, impersonal, and graphic. The characters in The Thing are a decently likable bunch, and they're all played by very good and well-cast actors, but this is not the kind of film where you're going to form a strong emotional bond with any of the characters. Which is good because they all die horribly. As gripping and suspenseful as The Thing undeniably is, it creates a deliberate distance between the viewers and the characters. There's no romance in The Thing. There's no sex in The Thing. There are no women in The Thing. There are no close interpersonal bonds of any kind in The Thing. John Carpenter isn't trying to take you on an emotional journey of optimistic self-discovery throughout the film, nor is he trying to titillate you with the over-the-top gore. He is just trying to unsettle you to your core, and boy, he is awfully good at doing exactly that. As you've probably already guessed, the key to the critical reevaluation of The Thing, as with Blade Runner, was the emerging popularity of home video. E.T. and Poltergeist were films that worked beautifully as a collective experience, viewed in a theater surrounded by rapt viewers taking the same journey alongside you. Of course, you should obviously see The Thing on a big screen if you ever have the chance. But it is a cold and solitary film whose true power emerges after you've had some time to think about it. This made it a good choice for viewing in the privacy of your home, which is how a lot of young Gen Xers ultimately saw The Thing, and they realized, hey, this film is excellent. After a disastrous theatrical run, the boom of VHS rentals in the early to mid-80s finally gave The Thing the chance to find its audience at last. Next time, I only want to see you in the Purple Rain, when I take a deep dive into Prince's musical drama from 1984. Thank you for joining me, and I will see you here later.